You're just not going to follow the law. That one line, from Senator Patty Murray, staring straight at FBI Director Kash Patel, froze an entire Senate room. You could feel the silence. The head of the FBI had just admitted, under oath, that he didn't have a legally required budget plan, no timeline, no answers, and somehow, no urgency. For a split second, every person watching realized something deeper was breaking. If the top law enforcement agency in America won't follow the law itself, what does that say about everyone else? This wasn't theater. It wasn't politics. It was a moment that peeled back the curtain on how power really works. Slow, evasive, and untouchable. Murray's voice cut through the noise like a knife.
Well, we also need a full budget request, not a single paragraph full of wild talking points that we saw with the skinny budget proposal. We're now having a budget hearing without a budget request. So, Director Patel, where is the FY 2026 budget request for the FBI?
It's being worked on, ma'am.
Have you reviewed it? Have you approved it?
Not yet.
When will we get it?
As soon as I can get it from my interagency partners and get it approved.
6 months from now?
I don't know, ma'am. I'm not
Well,
going to make
how
up a
do
timeline.
we as Congress do our budget and our work without that request and without the spend plan?
Well, ma'am, I'm here. I'm
don't
doing the
care.
best I can. I can't make up answers. I'm going to commit to you to work on getting you the information you need.
That is insufficient and deeply disturbing. No response?
I've given my response.
Well, the FBI is already down 1,900 employees since 2023 as a direct result of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And under the Trump administration, FBI agents, analysts, linguists, cyber experts, and scientists are being asked to do a lot more in order to keep us safe. Director Patel, we all know that budget cuts will reduce the FBI's ability to counter threats of terrorism, and it will hinder its ability to keep pace with firearm background checks and shutter operations that combat violent crime, drugs, gangs, and transnational organized crime. Now, I understand that you told our House colleagues yesterday that you don't want to reduce the FBI workforce, meaning that you disagree with what President Trump is proposing?
No, I agree that we can sustain the mission with the proposed budget, and I agree with the budget. And as I said yesterday, I believe that what I said was I can do more with more. And I gave examples of what more we could do if we were given more.
Well, it's different than what you told the House yesterday. So what are you communicating to the President and the White House about what you need? And again, we don't have a budget request from you, so I'm not sure what you're asking us for.
I'm not asking you for anything at this time.
You can operate without a budget?
I never said that.
Well, this is unprecedented. Okay, well, let me just go to another topic since you're not going to answer that. The FBI partners with state, local, and tribal law enforcement organizations. They provide critical intelligence and operational capabilities to combat violent crime and gangs and terrorist threats, fentanyl trafficking, challenges that our local communities really can't face alone. I'm going to give you an example. A few years ago, the Southeast Washington Safe Streets FBI Task Force worked with our Benton County and Franklin County Sheriff's Office, multiple Tri-Cities police departments, and the State Corrections Department to carry out one of the largest ever drug seizures in the region's history. Now we've got an administration already cutting more than $800 million in assistance in 2025 to local law enforcement organizations while proposing a $500 million cut for the FBI. Director Patel, can you explain to this committee how cutting resources for our local law enforcement partner agencies the FBI relies on to help your bureau keep safe? How do you expect the FBI and local law enforcement to do more without those significant resources they need?
The FBI will continue to do what it does, which is work with embedded state and local law enforcement officers in our Joint Terrorism Task Force, in our Safe Streets Task Force, in our gang task forces. Those are a priority. Those billets have been maintained. Those billets have not been reduced. And with my reorientation, reprogramming that we've notified Congress to, you will see an augmentation in the field in every single state in this country.
Well, again, we need to see the numbers and we need to see that budget from you. Let me ask you about the NICS system. The FBI is really on the front lines of keeping guns out of the hands of very dangerous criminals. The NICS serves a really critical role in enhancing national security and public safety by conducting background checks. You know this. They are supported by the vast majority of American people, and I wanted to ask you this morning, will you commit to continuing to fund and run the FBI background check system?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to ask one final question here, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk again about how the FBI is focusing its resources. President Trump has turned the Department of Justice into a tool to go after his perceived enemies, and many of the actions we have now seen at the FBI are alarming. The FBI has reassigned and pushed out career FBI agents for political reasons. We have seen fear and intimidation promoted throughout the Bureau, including by polygraphing your own staff. We've seen the arrest of a sitting judge in Wisconsin. And during your confirmation hearing, you committed that there would be no politicization, no retribution at the FBI under your leadership. You've reportedly placed FBI employees responsible for investigation January 6 cases on leave. Is that keeping up your promise of no politicization, no retribution?
It is, because that's wildly inaccurate. Let me tell you what the FBI has done since I got there. 8,276 federal arrests, to 820 kilograms seized of fentanyl. That's enough to kill 250,000 people. Over 3,000 firearms seized, 350 gang cases, 3,000 cases against violent
Well,
criminals.
that's not my question. We know that you...
Well, you asked if I was weaponizing the FBI, and I am not. I'm giving you the hard, concrete examples of the men and women putting handcuffs on bad people, doing harm to our children and innocent Americans. I do not see weaponization.
You have placed on leave FBI employees responsible for the investigation of January 6th. That sounds political to me.
I have not placed anyone on leave who has not violated their ethical obligation or their oath to the Constitution.
So if they were investigating January 6th, you believe they were violating an ethic obligation?
Nope. I think the common theme here is you putting words in my mouth, and I'm not going to tolerate it, nor will the men and women of the FBI.
Well, you did place on leave an analyst responsible for investigating Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. Is that politicization? Is that retribution?
No, not if she broke the law or the ethical guidelines. I don't know which case you're talking about, but that's the standard. And we will hold ourselves inwardly accountable, and we will not be strayed from our mission because people think we are politicizing the Bureau. If you want to talk about someone who was attacked by a weaponized Bureau, you're looking at him. And now he's the director of the FBI, and he's cleaning it up.
Well, I would just say to everyone who's listening that the FBI needs to be focused on its mission to keep the entire country safe. It should not be weaponized for partisan political gain. Thank you,
We are.
Chairman.
Senator Kennedy.
Calm, direct, and unmistakably furious. She wasn't asking for spin or speculation. She was asking for the truth, a basic budget plan, required by law, that the FBI simply decided not to hand over. And as Patel stumbled through vague promises, "I'll get you an answer, ma'am. I don't have a timeline. I'm working with interagency partners." You could almost hear the collective disbelief. The nation's top cop, in the hot seat, caught off guard by one of the simplest questions imaginable. Where's the money going? But that wasn't the whole story, because what happened in that hearing didn't just expose a missing document. It exposed a mindset, one that treats accountability as optional. Murray's patience evaporated when Patel repeated the same hollow lines. "It was due last week by law," she said. And when Patel replied, "I understand," she delivered the sentence that would echo across the country. "You're just not going to follow the law." Her words weren't shouted. They were spoken, the kind of tone that signals you've lost trust completely. And that's what made the moment so powerful. This wasn't a partisan attack. It was a fundamental question. What happens when the enforcers of the law decide they're above it? Patel didn't have an answer. He didn't even try to defend it. When asked if the budget might come 6 months later, he shrugged. "I don't know, ma'am." No explanation, no urgency, no accountability. And for anyone paying attention, that's when it hit. The real issue wasn't the delay. It was the attitude, because this wasn't a simple bureaucratic mix-up. The FBI's 2025 spending plan, worth $10.7 billion of taxpayer money, wasn't a suggestion. It was required by law. The due date wasn't flexible. The request wasn't optional. And yet here was the director, testifying before Congress, admitting that the agency didn't comply. Imagine telling your boss you don't know where $10 billion went and expecting to keep your job. That's essentially what happened in this hearing. Murray made sure everyone understood what was at stake. This isn't about paperwork or politics. It's about oversight, about whether an agency with the power to surveil, investigate, and detain citizens can operate without transparency. Without a spend plan, Congress is blind. Lawmakers can't see how resources are being used, what's being cut, or which missions are being prioritized. That blindness is dangerous. Because behind those missing pages might be decisions about counterterrorism funding, cyber defense, or child protection programs. When no one knows where the money goes, accountability disappears. And when accountability disappears, so does trust. Patel kept repeating that he was doing his best. But doing your best doesn't replace following the law. Murray wasn't buying it, and neither were the other senators in the room. Even those who rarely agreed found themselves staring at the same uncomfortable reality. The nation's most powerful law enforcement agency had failed a basic legal test. But the deeper problem? It wasn't just this one hearing. It was the pattern in recent years. More and more Americans have begun to question whether institutions meant to serve the people have instead started serving themselves. And moments like this only fuel that doubt. When the head of the FBI can't produce a budget plan and faces no immediate consequence, it sends a chilling message. Laws are negotiable if you're powerful enough. Critics say this isn't the first time the Bureau has sidestepped oversight. Past reports have pointed to mission creep, political bias, and questionable resource allocation. Each controversy chips away at public confidence. Each delay, each unanswered question, adds to the feeling that accountability is slipping away 1 inch at a time. And that's exactly what Senator Murray warned about. This wasn't just about a document. It was about a system. One where transparency is treated like a burden. One where oversight is tolerated. Until it becomes inconvenient. Patel's composure throughout the exchange almost made it worse. Calm, measured, almost indifferent. The more he deflected, the more it looked like evasion was the norm, not the exception. When Murray said, "That is insufficient and deeply disturbing," it wasn't political theater. It was disbelief that someone entrusted with enforcing the law could show so little respect for it. Think about that. A senator having to remind the FBI that laws aren't optional. That's not how it's supposed to work. The Bureau's entire legitimacy rests on the idea that it's impartial and bound by the same rules as everyone else. Break that illusion, and the whole structure begins to crack. Because if the FBI won't follow its own legal requirements when Congress is watching, what happens behind closed doors? That question hung over the hearing like smoke. Every vague answer from Patel only made it thicker. "I'm working with interagency partners. As soon as I can get it. I don't have a timeline." These weren't answers. They were evasions, wrapped in polite, bureaucratic language. And while he may have thought those phrases would calm the room, they had the opposite effect. You could see the disbelief on faces across the dais. Senators who've sat through hundreds of hearings realized they were witnessing something rare, a director stonewalling in plain sight. The symbolism here can't be overstated. Congress represents the people. The FBI enforces the law. When one refuses to answer to the other, that's not just a disagreement. That's a constitutional imbalance. And when Murray said, "You're just not going to follow the law," she wasn't talking to one man. She was talking to an entire system that's forgotten accountability. This is where the conversation turns from scandal to warning. Because this moment wasn't just about Kash Patel or one missing budget plan. It was a sign of something larger. A slow erosion of accountability across institutions that once prided themselves on integrity. When laws become flexible, when deadlines don't matter, when oversight is brushed aside, democracy itself begins to rot quietly. From the inside out, that it's not dramatic to say that trust is the foundation of the system. Every agency, every court, every elected official depends on it. And once that trust is gone, no press conference or report can bring it back. That's what Murray's tone carried. Not anger, but disappointment. Because you can't legislate integrity to as the hearing dragged on, Patel kept to the same lines. The senators pressed harder, but he didn't budge. And with each vague promise, it became clearer. The issue wasn't confusion, it was control. Whoever controls the information controls the narrative. And by refusing to provide the budget, the FBI had effectively taken that control for itself. The irony is painful. The very agency tasked with upholding the law was now being accused of violating it, and all in the open. If this were any other organization, subpoenas would follow. But here, the silence spoke louder than any answer Patel could have given. And this is where the bigger story emerges. If agencies can ignore their legal obligations without consequence, what precedent does that set for everyone else? What message does it send to every smaller department, every official, every citizen watching? That compliance is optional, that accountability is negotiable. That's why this exchange matters more than it seems. It's not about numbers on a page. It's about the idea of the rule of law itself. Whether powerful institutions are still bound by it, or whether it only applies to the rest of us. Some observers called it a bureaucratic oversight. Others called it defiance. But for millions of Americans already skeptical of their institutions, it felt like confirmation. Proof that transparency ends where power begins. Senator Murray's question still lingers. If you won't follow the law, who will? And it's not rhetorical. Because every time a government agency shrugs off its legal duties, it teaches others to do the same. Accountability erodes quietly in procedural hearings like this one, not with explosions or scandals, but with silence. By the time the gavel fell, the damage was done. Murray's frustration became symbolic, a voice for anyone who's ever felt ignored by systems meant to protect them. The exchange wasn't long, but it was unforgettable. It showed how fragile transparency really is when power decides it doesn't owe anyone an explanation. And maybe that's the scariest part. Because this wasn't a secret meeting. It was public, recorded, broadcast. The whole country could see it. And even then, there were no answers, no consequences, just a shrug at "So, if this is how accountability looks when the cameras are on, imagine what happens when they're not." Because at its core, this moment wasn't about numbers, policies, or politics. It was about trust. Trust that the law applies equally. Trust that oversight means something. Trust that those in power are still answerable to the people. And when that trust cracks, it doesn't just hurt one institution. It weakens them all. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If the FBI won't submit its legally required budget plan, if its director can't give Congress a straight answer, if the people we trust to enforce the law treat it like a formality, then we're not just watching bureaucracy fail. We're watching the system test how far it can go before someone pushes back. And if no one does, that line might vanish altogether. What do you think? Was this just another political clash, or something far deeper about how power evades accountability? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to keep following stories that peel back the curtain on what's really happening behind Washington's closed doors, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps the channel more than you know, and it ensures you never miss the next time someone in power says the quiet part out loud.